I think it's very important, however much anguish everyone quite rightly feels about the individual who's been captured by ISIL, that we don't allow ourselves to play ISIL's game. ISIL wants to draw Britain and America into what they regard as a war of civilizations, a war of religions. We've got to remember that we can only be effective in delivering a blow against ISIL by working in cooperation with other countries, the Jordanians, the Turks, the legitimate government in Baghdad, the legitimate authorities in the north of Kurdistan, of Iraq. And the more we do that, the more we assemble, through the United Nations and others, a great coalition of nations who are ready to work together, the better we will be placed to finally squeeze ISIL out of existence altogether.
So a British hostage makes no difference to people like yourselves who have to make these decisions?
No, it makes a huge difference, because
not
my
in
heart goes...
practical terms, in terms of the policy
well,
that is forward.
I'm not going to give a running commentary, nor would you expect me to, on any of the specific efforts that may or may not be undertaken to secure the safety of that individual hostage. What I'm saying to you is, if we want to pursue a strategy which is effective in thwarting the medieval barbarism of ISIL, we've got to remember that that's not going to be done through overnight airstrikes alone. It's not going to be done by one nation alone. It's not going to be done by the Ministry of Defence or the Pentagon alone. It's got to be done in concert with a whole broad range of other countries, led by those countries in the region, on the ground, who face the greatest and most mortal threat of ISIL themselves.
Isn't it time to at least consider the possibility of paying ransom, of paying money, of negotiating to secure the freedom of British citizens?
Look, I understand totally the wish.
Countries do it, after all.
I understand totally the wish when terror organisations, hostage takers, demand a ransom. There's the most human reflex to say, look, let's just do whatever we can to keep the hostage or hostages safe. But of course, the lesson is, the more we play the game of the terrorists, the more they'll come back for more. The more you pay ransoms, which they then use, by the way, to inflict further terror on us, the worse the violence will become. We simply cannot play by the rules set by the terrorists. If we do so, they win, we lose.
If IS and ISIL are such a threat, people are slightly confused as to why British forces are not acting against them in the region. Why are we not doing what the Americans are doing and directly, militarily bombing them?
Well, we're supporting the American measures. We're playing a huge role in providing the humanitarian relief to the many thousands of people who are affected by ISIL. And I have certainly made very clear that as the international community comes together, it'll be very important to see what happens in the discussions in the United Nations in the coming weeks. Of course, we shouldn't rule anything out. I want Britain to play an active role to rid the world of this scourge, which is ISIL. But we have to do it in a way where we are acting in support of the countries in the region, and we don't get sucked into what will be considered by some, and certainly described by ISIL, as a sort of West versus the rest conflict. That would be a fateful mistake. If
Britain were to take part in bombing, is it your view that there should first be a vote in the House of Commons?
Oh, absolutely. If you take a planned action which has been worked up patiently and carefully with other countries, then of course you should seek the consent of Parliament.
Because the Prime Minister seems to suggest that there would be circumstances where it could happen and then you would go back afterwards.
What the Prime Minister was saying, quite rightly, was, of course there might be circumstances. One can envisage, I'm not saying that this is purely theoretical, of course there may be circumstances where this government, or indeed future governments, decide that overnight an emergency military operation needs to be undertaken. And it's just simply not pragmatic or practical to convene Parliament quickly enough.